It's Championship Sunday time for the Mythic Dungeon International's second West Cup. And now the stakes are getting even higher as we saw 40K exiting the tournament yesterday, taking that 7th or 8th place, which starts blowing the door open for a couple more competitors to start qualifying for BlizzCon. Hello, I'm Jack, and joining me right now, we've got Sloot, Nagura, and Tettles, and my friends. We are friends this time, Sloot. We are. We made up our difference.
What happened overnight?
We're fine. we're fine, but the Tettles.
Oh, okay. That's right. Minus Tettles. My friends, we're getting ourselves ready to start looking at the first match of the day between Paint for Femme and Abrakeydabra. If we're taking a look at our bracket under that one, we also have No Girls Allowed and Depleto Squad squaring off as well a little bit later. So these two matchups, just to start off our day, are gonna set the tone in many cases to see where Paint for Femme, where No Girls Allowed start standing into that end. And then a little bit later on, we're going to look at both method teams squaring off in that upper final. So as we're getting a look at our bracket, you can see it right now, followed by those lower semis, lower finals, and our grand finals, of course. So Paint for Femme had a pretty impressive showing in the first week, but they've really struggled thus far here, Sloot.
Yeah, I mean, there was a couple of, not roster swaps, but class swaps, right? You had Shella on the Unholy DKs, really kind of not used to playing it, but he was starting to get into the role and into the class a bit better yesterday. So it should be interesting to see if they can carry that momentum going into today. And I mean, they're going to need to. 40K is out now, kind of unexpectedly, really. So it kind of starts to open up this opportunity for Paint for Femme and No Girls Allowed to rise up in the ranks. So I know they're going to be hungry for it, and I'm sure they spent a bunch of time practicing overnight.
I don't doubt it at all. And now, Paint for Femme is about 30 points behind No Girls Allowed, if I'm not mistaken. So with 40K exiting the tournament, they still have the most points for 4th place to make sure that they're qualifying. But it starts opening up the door a little bit, Tettles. And if No Girls Allowed or Paint for Femme are able to make a really deep run this tournament and the next, it actually can give them quite a good chance to qualify.
They need some 2nd or 3rd place finishes. Both teams so basically No Girls Allowed either needs a 3rd place and a 4th place finish with 40K exiting 7th, 8th next week. So there needs to be like a lot of improvement from these teams where they need to be overcoming Abrakeydabra in Method NA and Method EU to be able to break into the top 3.
Yeah, the first matchup, as you mentioned, going to be Abrakeydabra with Paint for Femme with Waycrest Manor. Now, this was also the affix combination that you voted for, your weekly depletes. Thanks to our Twitter voting systems, we got Fortified, Bursting, and Necrotic. And onto this one, Nagura, we have seen it is just a nasty, nasty affix combination. Tanks going down, heavy Necrotic stacks generating all over the place. But we've also seen a little bit of innovation with some different healer combinations, too.
Yeah, good job, Twitter, on that one. The teams are very happy with this affix combination, for sure. Yeah, we've seen lots of teams struggle. Even, Method EU had full team wipes in that dungeon, so definitely not the easiest affix combination there. And we've seen things like Triple Demon Hunter as well. So we didn't see Paint for Femme or Abra yet.
But we're seeing the Mistweaver.
We see Mistweaver. There we go.
Zmock bringing back the Mistweaver for Waycrest Manor. We saw him play it last week as well. Double Unholy DKs coming out. And Sloot, as you mentioned, Shella's getting more and more comfortable with that Unholy DK.
I mean, teams at this point have realized the power of Unholy. And, as other teams are starting to dip into other classes and specs, who knows what some of these top teams will try. But, I mean, it's do or die now. They have to put it on the table and perform top-notch.
It will indeed. And if you'd like to place your votes, be sure to use hashtag Abra or PFF right now to give your opinion on who you think is going to be taking it as we're starting up our Game 1 right now in Waycrest Manor.
Oh, God. There's absolutely no better way to start this day than in Waycrest Manor with Bursting and Necrotic for these two teams, and Fortified to make it even worse. So we're going to see probably Mass Pull here right on top of the Void Emissary for both teams. Mass CD popped on both sides. They got to get that Emissary down before it wipes, and then, of course, they will go up to the top. So really the notable differences here in Nagura is that we have the Resto Druid versus the Mistweaver Monk, and we have the double Rogue on Abrakeydabra. Now, I would say most people's money's probably on Abra to win this match, but hopefully Paint for Femme can bring some big play here.
Yeah, I agree. With the comp difference, there's actually things that can happen to Abra, where Paint for Femme does have a little bit of an advantage because of the Druid. For example, Resses, right? We'd have 2 Battle Resses on Paint for Femme's side, so if the Resser goes down on Abra, so if Ashan goes down, no one can get him back up, while Paint for Femme can get anyone up unless both the healer and the DK die at the same time. So there's definitely some disadvantages. even if they're small ones. But we'll see what Zmock can do on this Mistweaver as they both engage the first boss here. They try it. Both holding on to that Bloodlust. I assume They're waiting for Sister Melody to be enabled, and then they'll pull trash on top and use that Bloodlust too.
Mr. Milady.
Milady, I'm sorry.
Of course, that is indeed what they're doing. They do want to make sure that they're pulling trash on top of a boss that isn't exactly so threatening to healing, having a 50% heal reduction aura on Sister Selena, or even a ramp-up effect as opposed on Sister Malady, that they're not even doing it on that. So maybe Sister Briar's the answer where they want to do it. We'll have to see. Or maybe they're just going to do it at the end of the fight.
Maybe.
Let's just keep guessing until they do it and say, that's the one we thought.
That's exactly what I meant.
Sister Briar in action here in just a moment for Abrakeydabra. Both teams sitting at 5% of the trash. Sister Briar already down to from her first phase for Pain for Femme. Both, Abrakeydabra has popped their Bloodlust, but a bit of trouble here for Dr. J as he procs his Cheat Death. Finally, we get those Jagged Titles healed off of Ashine as they cleave everything down. Sister Selena has started again, meaning the healing reduction aura is present on the teams along with all the trash here. So a lot of pressure here for Divine Field and Zmok right now as Pain for Femme still has not pulled anything on top of the boss or engaged with Bloodlust at this moment, which makes me believe they're either saving it obviously for the very end of the fight or maybe a big pull in the courtyard.
They actually pulled a captain and a guard on top of this boss, which is something we haven't really seen before, I don't think. It's a patrol, as far as I'm aware, and it does a lot of tank damage. That's why we've seen all of the CC come out. We saw the Ring of Peace, making sure that Divine stays away from those mobs, because we all know how much tank damage those mobs do, especially on Fortified, while also having all of these necrotic stacks. So good job on Abra being able to finish up those trash mobs while still fighting the boss at the same time. Pain for Femme finishing the boss a little bit earlier, but having some trouble here as Femme and Shella go down.
Well, that was a purposeful skip. Now, Shella was not. He does have Shadow Meld. I'm not sure. Well, it could have been on purpose. I'm not sure exactly what else he would shave his Shadow Meld for, but he got caught in that pull to the side. Femme is playing a Dwarf. Actually, both tanks, of course, are playing Dwarf because we are in this necrotic environment, so they want that drop of necrotic every 2 minutes or as often as possible from that racial. So Divine Field going down as well for the exact same reason as the rest of the team skips that really nasty Void Touched Emissary pack. And we start off in the courtyard here. Pain for Femme still holding on to their Bloodlust. I really think they're going to use it here in the courtyard on top of the Void Emissary. It's a really nasty pull. We've seen a lot of teams struggle with it yesterday, and here goes Abra right in there, wasting absolutely no time. Dangerous pull coming in here as the Void Touched Emissary starts pulsing on the group. They're going to need really spot-on interrupts. They don't have an offensive Dispel for those soul fetishes going out, and there finally is indeed the Bloodlust for Pain for Femme.
Yeah, we see the Bloodlust being popped, both teams doing the exact same pull, seems like. Now, the Void Emissary needs to die very quickly before you get any of those other AoEs off, but both teams making sure the Void Emissary does die first, so both should not have any trouble finishing off this pull. This is one of the most difficult pulls that we've seen, and lots of teams had trouble with this one, especially with those infected thorns going out from the Thorn Shapers. Now, we do have two people who can dispel it. We have the Mistweaver and the Windwalker on Pain for Femme's side, so they should be fine on that one.
I mean, Abra here has 2% extra trash. They did pull the extra trash on top of the Triad, but it was more than 2% worth of trash. So Pain for Femme did indeed, I believe, do a slightly bigger pull here on top of the Void Emissary because of the Bloodlust. Both teams are actually quite neck and neck right now. The only really slip-up we've seen was that death from Shelle trying to skip the Void Touched Emissary, but, you know, such is life. It happens. Baru here not getting dispelled by Ricky and dipping really low, getting his Cheat Death procced. What a waste of Cheat Death there. Mew also getting the disease on him. No dispels coming out of Ricky right now. Finally, we see one on Baru, who is now vulnerable for the next 6 minutes, does not have Cheat Death. Dr. J still has 3 minutes on his Cheat Death. He is to do a pretty substantial pull here on the hall leading up to Raw, wanting to get down this Void Touched Emissary, easily line of sighting it on the side of that corner. Pain for Femme still sitting at 18%, and it looks like they've actually engaged the Soulbound Goliath already, doing the typical pull to the side of Matron Brindle.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened. Barrow was taking aggro from all of the mobs and then tricksing the boss to Femme while vanishing off the aggro from all the other mobs. Now, some of the Thorn Shapers were actually pulled on top and the Emissary as well, so they were struggling a little bit on the pull, but mainly because Barrow got 2 of those debuffs Ricky did not dispel, and then therefore the rest of it was not shifting into a cat form or bear form when the Thorns of the boss came out and did get hit by it. And then they had some trouble, but they did recover at this point. They also finished off the mobs, so they should be able to finish off this boss just fine unless they make any sort of mistakes, but it should not be happening on Goliath on a 45.
You know, it is a bit early for caster cursing Nagura. I don't know if we want to doom these teams just yet, but Abrakeydabra sitting at 31% trash, doing a pretty sizable pull here. A lot of Thorn Shapers in there. Want to make sure you interrupt those Soul Fetishes and Effigy reconstructions as much as possible. Pain for Femme, of course, lower on trash by 9%, but they are halfway through Soulbound Goliath here. Really good show from both of these teams right now as the Ring of Peace comes down on the side of Abrakeydabra to help Divine Field clear those necrotic stacks. He wants to hold on to that stone form for likely a more dangerous or bigger pull later on. Ashine unfortunately getting the brunt of the disease. A lot of damage coming in on the group. 2 diseases, 1 on Smok, 1 on Ashine. Finally they fade as Dr. J takes down below 50% HP as well. Pain for Femme sitting nice and pretty here as Soulbound Goliath hits 27%, and they should be off into the hallway soon.
Yeah, one thing to note about Pain for Femme's Rogue Barrow, he's actually running human, which is something we've seen for the first time in Underout by Pain for Femme, because they wanted to get rid of that Lasher stun, which the human racial allows you to get rid of any sort of CC on you. But in Waker's mana, I'm not completely sure what exactly he's going to use it for or what the reason behind it is. Maybe it's just something to do with damage. Maybe he likes the human more. The human damage benefits more over Dwarf or Night Elf, which we've mostly seen from the Rogues. But we'll see what happens later as they're about to finish off Soulbound Goliath. And Abrakeydabra just now engaged the boss. But again, they're pretty far ahead in trash, 16%. So they're still pretty even, both of those teams.
A lot of damage coming in here on top of Mew and Femme right now. Finally starting to stabilize as they pull the guard packs sitting in the foyer or left side of the mansion, or of the manor rather, after the triad here, clipping it on top of the boss. But they still have a fair bit of ways to go on. Actually, no, they don't. That was actually Shella's nameplate. I get confused by Shella's nameplate. I was like, oh, there's an enemy running around. Oh, it's actually a red rogue. Pain for Femme, 26% here. They've dealt off with the entire courtyard. Soulbound Goliath is dead, and now they're getting ready to do some of the pulls in the hall here, including the Void Touched Emissary that Abrakeydabra has already dealt with. A lot of damage coming in on Smok right now. They as well have combined some Thorn Shapers on top of Soulbound Goliath, who sits at 63%. Pretty aggressive pull here for Pain for Femme. I don't think they pulled the Gorgers on the Abrakeydabra side, so as long as they can get down that Void, though, shouldn't be a problem.
It looked pretty scary there for a second for Smok on Abrakedabra's side as he dropped really low, and then he got the thorns from the boss applied to him as well. This is something I've been talking about before. Resident Druids, they can easily avoid the thorns by just shapeshifting, but that's not something the Mistweaver Monk can do on Abra's side. So you can get a little bit unlucky if you get the thorns on you in a very bad moment while you're kiting or while you have to do something else or while you have to heal the tank. Then it can cause some issues. But so far, Abra's doing a really good job. They also pulled some trash on top. They also pulled the Thorn Shaper, so the exact same pull as Pain for Femme did earlier. Pain for Femme, they're already on their way to do the next trash pack. And this is really the most difficult trash in this whole dungeon, really, just because there's so much AoE damage going on because of the bursting and the spits and all those debuffs on the raid from the Gorger, bleeds, and so on. And then on top of that, you also have the tank, which has necrotic and is barely healable at all.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a rough hallway. You can see all the capped out debuffs essentially on the player frames at the top. A lot of damage here on Femme right now. He's going to need a bit of love. One of the Infest casts went off as well. That's going to turn one maggot. And actually, there's 3 Infest casts on him. So all those maggots that are infecting Femme will actually essentially spawn into 2, so they're going from 3 to 6 maggots here, so just extra health that they have to chew through, plus those necrotic stacks. But Femme did use his stone skin there from Dwarf Rachel and managed to reset the stacks without needing any kind of ridiculous kiting or Ring of Peace to save him there. Interesting to note, Divine Field, for one of the rare times, is actually running an offensive trinket this time, so he's playing Butcher's Block, whereas Pain for Femme is sticking, or Femme on Pain for Femme is sticking to a more traditional double defensive trinket right now. So Abrakeydabra definitely trying to edge out as much offensive value as they can right now and overcome this team. But Pain for Femme's looking pretty good here right now, Nagura. They're only 4% behind on trash, and they're both sitting in the hallway. There's that 1 death difference, though, still. So if it goes at this pace, they got their work cut out for them.
Yeah, and there's a small little trick that I see Femme doing right there. He jumped on this little latch on the corner, and Barrow was tricksing some mobs on top of him. They all snapped to him, so found a little snapping spot here in Wakerest as well in this dungeon. It's always nice to see those new tricks and things they come up with. They worked out really well as they gathered up a lot of mobs here for Pain for Femme. They're now going to be ahead in percentage compared to Abra.
Yeah, Abra is combining a bit of the trash and rolls room with the side emissary of the tides there with the infected peasant, something that Pain for Femme just killed. you know, the most aggressive thing you can do in the room here is cleave everything down on top of the boss, which is exactly what they're doing actually right now. Paint for Femme, aggressive pull here. They actually left the corner pack untouched right now, which is the one that contains the Enchanted Emissary. We actually saw that wipe method EU yesterday, so they don't want anything to do with that right now. A lot of damage coming in on Femme. He doesn't have Stone Skin available. Double bleed on Ricky as well. Needs some attention from Mew, finally getting healed up as the bursting starts rolling in on top of the group. Femme sitting at 42 stacks of necrotic. He needs that stone form coming up right away. There it is, immediately pops it, but it was too little too late. Femme goes down, Battle Rest comes up from Muo, and he gets Femme up, but there's going to be aggro all over the place. Ricky goes down, Bear is about to go down, Muo goes down, and it looks like it's going to be a full team wipe for Paint for Femme here. This entire reset strategy relies over that stone form for dwarves, and they pulled too prematurely. He still had about 20-30 seconds on that cooldown before they pulled, and it was too little too late. By the time he popped it, he was already at 43 stacks of necrotic, a bunch of bursting stacks, and it was just too late to heal at that point. They should have waited just a bit longer, maybe pulled an extra trash pack, and then gone into the boss.
Yeah, either that or, I mean, also the Ring of Peace from Ricky came out almost immediately as soon as they pulled. Maybe if they, you know, just wait a little bit, let Femme get some necrotic stacks, and then use the Ring of Peace, then use the stun, just delay everything a little bit until that stone form is ready. Either way, maybe they were faster than they are in practice, because usually you know exactly when stone skin is ready, especially in a dungeon like that when you need it, when you literally rely on stone skin. So either they were faster than they were in practice, or they just miscalculated something. We see the heal actually going down here, unfortunately, while trying to run back and get the rest up. But Ricky is there to rest him, so they should be able to get everyone up. But at this point, they're really far behind because of this whip.
Yeah, that's actually really lucky for them, because what happened is the Void Emissary has True Sight. You can't stealth past it. And I think he had his Shadow Meld at the end, but something went wrong with it. Nonetheless, Ricky did manage to save the day there and res, and they're going to go at it again. Abrakeydabra moving much slower through everything else and killing some of those marksmen in the living room or lodge area, if you will. 69% on the board for them, 70%, 72% now. On the board for Abrakeydabra as they get ready for the Raw Room here in a moment. They have their Bloodlust available. Both healers have procced their staff. Mew's, of course, staff debuff is gone because he died, but it was procced earlier during the haul, so neither of those teams really have a huge staff proc to rely on. Here comes finally the Bloodlust with half of the trash in Raw's room. The Enchanted Emissary being kept at bay on the side. Certainly don't want that, reflecting 200% of the damage here, and no problem for the team. Early Ring of Peace to make sure Divine Field is nice and safe. That was only at 15 stacks of necrotic out of the max 50. Well, you can go beyond 50, but max a healing debuff of 50. Divine Field popping Stone Form as well and ending it there. But Femme having a lot of trouble on the side of Paint for Femme right now as they do another aggressive pull. They don't have the Bloodlust that's coming up in a second. We'll see if they decide to use it right now. It looks like they're much more stable. Stone Form not available on the side of Paint for Femme either, but looks like both teams managed to pull it off this time. But at what cost for Paint for Femme? They're now sitting at 10 deaths.
Yeah, that looked very sketchy here again for Paint for Femme. He did have the Stone Form ready this time around at the very start. Used it pretty early and then still got a lot of necrotic stacks after the Stone Form and almost went down. He was sitting on low percent HP for quite a long time. So some struggle here for Paint for Femme. Well, look at Abra, right? They were doing some trash before they did this Ral pull. They were waiting for the Bloodlust. They were waiting for the Bloodlust cooldown, did some other trash, some marksman that they have to do anyway if they don't want to backtrack afterwards, right? So I like what Abra did here. They were just, getting all the trash done first, waiting for the Bloodlust, then go to Ral, pop the Bloodlust, make this pull a lot safer. While Paint for Femme is prematurely kind of ran into Ral, not having the Stone Form ready, not having the Bloodlust, and just everything kind of falling apart. Not completely sure what exactly they want to use their Bloodlust on, but this pull really seems like Bloodlust would be very good here.
To be fair, when they pulled and wiped, their Bloodlust had like 3-4 minutes left on cooldown. I believe that they're going to use their Bloodlust with a combination of trash plus Lord and Lady Waycrest downstairs. So that was probably their practiced plan. Obviously didn't work out this time. I think the really big oversight was pulling before Stone Form was available for Femme. That's really what sealed the deal on his death there. But sealing the deal on death, Raw goes down for Paint for Femme as well as they start to head downstairs. Abrakeydabra sitting at 84% trash, 15% above Paint for Femme, 69 as they get ready to head downstairs as well. But I mean, Paint for Femme, Nagur, as you mentioned, they're going to have to do a bit more trash at some point in order to not have to backtrack. Mass stealth coming out of Abra here as they head downstairs and try to sneak past Matron Alma, who very slowly patrols the area and head downstairs into Lord and Lady Waycrest's area.
Yeah, so Abrakeydabra having a very clean run, 1 death so far only. Now, most of it, until this wipe from Pain for Femme, it looked very close between those two, and even looked like Pain for Femme is slightly faster compared to Abra. Now, Pain for Femme, though, having these struggles, having Shelley go down again here, you can see they have a rest available. Maybe they don't want to use it here, though. But in the end, Abrakeydabra just playing much cleaner, much better execution on their side, and it seemed like their strategy is also a little bit safer with, you know, with the Bloodlust on this very difficult pull. And they also just pulled the trash on top of Lady Waycrest, so they were also doing this one that Pain for Femme probably saving Bloodlust for, and Abra is doing this one without Bloodlust and just using it for Ral instead, which seemed to work out for them.
It works out fine. Divine Field, just a bit of trouble here, but big Absorb comes up on him right now, I believe, as an Edict proc there. So nice timing on that Absorb as Lady Waycrest hits her first transition. About to do second, Lord Waycrest going down to that 30% threshold where he does siphon some of the health off from Lady Waycrest, as we all know and love. Abrakeydabra, 90% trash here. They should be done pretty much with the Gloom Horrors in the Hall. I think they might need one more Soul Charmer. We'll see. Pain for Femme, bit unstable here though. Femme sitting at 20% HP. Ricky sitting at 30% HP. A lot of struggles for Mew right now to heal everyone up, and this Rune Weaver is just running around in circles, meleeing Fen goes down, Mew's running around in bear form, the Rune Weaver is just hitting him in the back, he's trying to taunt it off so they could reset the necrotic stacks on Fem, and it was just too little too late. Shella about to go down as well. I mean, everything started quite well for Pain for Femme here in Nagura, and now, I mean, triple wipe essentially, triple full wipe.
Yeah, this is really just a story of Pain for Femme, to be honest, because I remember the very first Underrot they played yesterday. Everything looked perfectly fine. They were doing those huge pulls. They saved their Bloodlust for the Kragma room. Everything seemed perfect, and it seemed like they had very good strategies as well. But then all of a sudden, they just start falling apart, and maybe that's the point. Maybe they just like overdo it. Maybe they try to do too many of those big and flashy pulls, and some of them work, but then the others just don't work because they don't have the cooldowns for it, or they don't have the defensives for it, which is the same thing that happened in Underrot as well. So maybe the strategies are just a little bit too much, or the success rate is just not high enough for them. So that's definitely a problem for Pain for Femme, as Abra does not seem to be having this problem at all so far, as they're still on 1 death, very clean, as they're about to finish off Lady Waycrest and Lord Waycrest.
Yeah, I mean, with Pain for Femme, I feel like their routing is good. I feel like it's no problem with the general strategy, but their performance has not been up to snuff. You know, just basic mistakes like pulling before you know your stone form is ready on roll. I'm sure Tettles will come back to this fact as well. You know, Femme not being able to reset his necrotic there, the healer dying because he needed to taunt the Rune Weaver and he couldn't heal anybody else. I mean, just things like that can happen. It's something that you need a lot of practice for, and Abrakeydabra certainly looking very well practiced here. The boss is dead, 91% on trash, and they're going to finish up with the 7 Gloom Horrors in this kind of hollowed out log. Is this a log? What is this exactly? It's like an empty bone river.
The bone river, I like that.
Let's go with the bone river. So they're going to kill off these Gloom Horrors. A lot of damage here on Divine Field right now. Those Gloom Horrors absolutely truck. Zamok sitting safely in his Ring of Peace as he rolls into action within the Gloom Horrors, making sure to help with likely a leg sweep, I would assume, coming up very soon here. No, there's the Shockwave, and okay, I guess not. So Divine Field taking a lot of damage here, but should be no problem for them to heal up. Okay, JK. Divine Field going down, but he's able to release right at Lord and Lady Waycrest, so not too much trouble for them. Certainly not enough to allow Pain for Femme to catch up.
Yeah, I think their plan was to have the first Ring of Peace on the first jump, because the Gloom Horrors, they jump on the furthest range target, do a lot of damage as well. So you saw Smok standing outside, use the Ring of Peace, and then they just wanted to finish them off before they jump a second time, but they didn't have enough damage, so Divine Field went out and sacrificed himself. But as he said, you just spawn there immediately, so not a problem for them. Didn't cost them a lot of time at all. Now they're 100% trash, so you do not have to backtrack afterwards, and they're on Gorok too. They don't have Bloodlust ready, but it's really not necessary on this fortified boss. Shouldn't be a problem. Pain for Femme did not actually use their Bloodlust for the pull, so...
Yeah, I saw that as well. I mean, my only saving grace here is that they're saving Bloodlust for a Gloom Horror plus Gorak Tool combo.
Yeah, maybe.
It's the only thing I can think about, because what else are you going to use it on? You're not going to use it on just the Gloom Horrors or just Gorak Tool. I mean, and if they do, I think that's a huge mistake in terms of pathing and strategy. But I don't even know if we'll get to see that really here, because Gorak Tool is now at 56% for Abrakeydabra, who has indeed already finished their trash. They have 2 deaths on the board right now. Pain for Femme finishing off Lady Waycrest soon, and Lord Waycrest going down accordingly. But once again, too little, too late. They have 1 minute death difference between them. you know, I mean, they're going to have to, it's do or die for them, right? They're on the chopping block on the next dungeon, so they need to win the next 2 dungeons in order to overtake what is looking like a very well-practiced and powerful Abra team.
Yeah, and Pain for Femme, if they want to, their goal is to qualify for BlizzCon, right? So if they're going to lose against Abrakeydabra here, then I think they can't even make it anymore. Even if they get first the next time around, it's just going to be almost impossible for Pain for Femme. So this is really, as you said, do or die, even for a BlizzCon spot as well. So Pain for Femme really does have to win the next 2 dungeons to still have a shot at all.
R2LB going down here momentarily for Abrakeydabra with an, I would say, almost flawless run. Wasn't, of course, perfect 2 deaths there, but as expected, I would at least assume Abrakeydabra takes the first game against Pain for Femme, Jack, and it's going to be a lot of pressure coming up on them.
Yeah, their backs are definitely against the wall there on the side of Pain for Femme. We get to see, you know, how distinctly Necrotic does affect this dungeon in particular. The high trash density, causing massive amounts of bursting damage on top of it, and the healer pressure and the tank pressure, Tettles, is just incredible.
Yeah, as the tank, just the Necrotic plus the bursting combo is by far the most dangerous thing overall. It was kind of interesting to actually see. It felt like Pain for Femme was actually just like slightly ahead of Abrakeydabra moving into Rawl's room, but unfortunate circumstances in that room ended up costing them the match. Abrakeydabra does an insanely large pull in this courtyard area, which I was actually kind of impressed with. They ended up doing all the hounds and really showing why that Mistweaver Monk can actually be good, because healing that raw amount of bursting stacks can actually be very dangerous, especially for like a Resto Druid, but Mistweaver Monk is actually pretty well equipped with Way of the Crane to be able to deal with that. Beru on that pull of Soulbound Goliath actually dropped incredibly low, and then Abrakeydabra, off the back of just a few Pain for Femme mistakes, ends up just like putting the... They turn on the gas, basically. They end up pulling Lord and Lady Waycrest with all of the trash in the room, a pretty standard pull that we've seen thus far, and they end up taking the match.
going to do so quite effectively onto that end. And we were able to start seeing, you know, Zmok, for example, mixing up his essences a little bit. He was running with the Ever-Rising Tide as one of his minors instead of Well of Existence for that Necrotic. So it's really cool to start seeing how these healers start adjusting to those phases, even though they're kind of taking away from one of those healing specific ones. Because we saw yesterday with like JV running with Well of Existence and having the entire well just getting dumped into a high Necrotic tank and having just almost no value out of that. But what we didn't see there was that Necrotic pull on into Rawl's room. Let's talk a little bit more about that one, Tettles.
Yeah, so Pain for Femme's Necrotic pull into Rawl specifically, Femme does not have that Stoneform racial available to him, and they end up using their Ring of Peace really early. Femme then gets really, really high on Necrotic stacks. He gets up to like 45 or something like that. Then some of the trash starts dying. He end up getting bursting stacks, and like right as that Stoneform actually becomes available to him, he just drops so low. And then basically on a pull of this size, once you actually drop that low, you're pretty much unrecoverable. Whenever the tank dies, the pull just pretty much instantly ends. Rawl specifically is already hard to reset on because of those oozlings spawning, so you can actually only get resets if the oozlings are dead while he's doing that explosion. So you need to be really careful with that boss specifically. So Pain for Femme, it was a really good pull, and if they were able to pull it off, it would have been nice. But unfortunately, Femme didn't have that Stoneform available until very late into that pull, which ended up costing them, unfortunately.
Yeah, maybe it starts going into composure, or maybe the nerves getting to them, because you kind of think about that pull as being the one break point in the dungeon that they always have to be able to execute on. It's just disappointing that they didn't have that Stoneform ready. They weren't preparing their cooldowns properly in accordance for it. So they'll have to watch out as next dungeon is going to be on to the Underrot. So we'll be taking a quick break before we get into it. The MDI will be right back. Abrakeydabra is up one against Pain for Femme, who is facing elimination as we're getting ourselves ready to go for game number 2 in the Underrot.
Game number 2 here, but game number 3 in the Underrot for Pain for Femme. They did it twice yesterday, and what a fitting place to return to on your what it could be last game of this week's Cup. So, the first game they had, did not go so well. Shello was very uncomfortable on the Holy DK.
Oh,
a lot of
Paladin.
deaths here, but we have a Paladin healer coming out of Abrakeydabra along with the Prot Warrior, still double rogue and Unholy DK. No changes on the side of Pain for Femme, so once again, they're kind of in that scary situation that if Ashan goes down for any reason, Nagura, then no battle res for them, whereas they have the safety net there for Pain for Femme. So hopefully Pain for Femme can perform like they did in the second Underrot they did yesterday a bit better here, because they're going to need it against this Abra team. Are they though? Abra going down, Zmok going down, Ashan going down, Divine Field's going to follow suit, and full team wipe right off the bat here for Abrakeydabra. I have cursed,
wow,
and it feels good.
I'm not completely sure. Okay, so I think it was a cast going off from the mask, a huge AoE cast, which can be interrupted, and they just didn't interrupt it, or it was a bunch of explosives going off. But I just saw that the whole team explode immediately. So we'll see. Tettles probably is going to analyze this clip afterwards for us. We see exactly what happens. But something went wrong for sure. They definitely just either misplayed the interrupt or they misplayed the explosive. So some huge mistake by Abrakeydabra here on the get-go, as Pain for Femme finished off their first pool just fine, no mistakes at all, no deaths so far. So they're on their way to the first boss. And Pain for Femme, to be honest, I mean, this is literally the third time, as we said, that they play this dungeon. So in theory, they should be very well practiced here, because if you have to play it so many times in your series, then you're going to practice it a lot.
Well, I mean, okay, fine, in tournament play, but I have no doubt that Abrakeydabra has done this dungeon 4 trillion times off cam, off tournament. So, you know, we'll see. But I mean, so far it didn't work out for them. I'm kind of curious onto the Holy Paladin choice here. Holy Paladin can certainly pump a ton of damage and healing, bursting with wings. So that's probably an offensive choice for them. We know that Abrakeydabra in general is a very offensively oriented or minded team, right? We have Divine Field running an offensive trinket usually, whereas you see most other tanks running Urchin and the Edict as well. So we'll see. Hopefully that pays off for them. But so far, a rough start for them. Elderly Axa here already at 30% for Pain for Femme as they look to start getting into, well, Kragma's room. Let's talk about Kragma's room for a sec. That's really where runs start to fall apart and get made and broken, Nagura.
Yeah, and I think Paladin is also a pretty decent choice because they can dispel diseases, right? So it's similar to a Mistweaver for this specific dungeon here, just because of this disease dispel that is just so important here. This is why we see the human racials come out here. As you can see, Baru is actually playing human, and Ricky on Pain for Femme is also playing human because of the racial, every man for himself, to get out of one of the CC effects. And now the crucial point about Kragma's room is that there's a lot of Emissary of Tides in here, as it is a tide heavy dungeon, and there's so many mobs that need to be interrupted, and you can't do that if you have the Emissary of Tides. Now in theory you could play it slow, you could play, you could CC it off and make sure nothing is standing in a tide aura, but then you just way too slow for these kind of MDI speedruns. So you just pull the tides on top, you can't interrupt anything, you can't stun anything, but you use this human racial to get out of it, and then you have to dispel because it is a disease. So Windwalkers are actually able to dispel it, and the Paladin on the other side of Abra is also able to dispel it.
Really scary pull here for Pain for Femme. They did commit their Bloodlust to it, as we see so many teams do. It looks like they're able to capitalize on it, though. Really good for them. No deaths, but Bloodlust just about to fall off perfectly. Tons of damage coming in from, obviously, the unholy DK Shella. And Ricky did actually quite well for the Windwalker damage there as well, while Baru is pretty much on orb explosive duty, making sure running around and cleaning all of those up. I also spoke too soon, actually. Divine is not wearing an offensive trinket this time, so he's respecting just how dangerous some of the trash can be moving into Kragma's room. Pain for Femme, though, sitting here at 30%, but, I also want to mention with the Holy Paladin, I'm not sure how much of a consideration really it is, but the Holy Paladin can't wear the staff. So they don't have the staff proc that Mew will have an advantage by being able to proc in an emergency situation or just to help kill something later. So that's a conscious choice that they have to make. And once again, hopefully it pays off for them in the form of the raw burst output, both for healing and damage that Holy Paladin can do for the side of Abrakeydabra, who has now killed Elderly Axa and is trying to play catch up as quickly as possible. We see the Arcana Trinket being channeled there by, was it Dr. Yeah, so Dr. J. So they're getting ready for a pretty big pull. But again, man, they did this yesterday. Jay channels his trinket,
and then they shroud. Yeah.
And then look how slowly they're moving. He just wasted about 7 seconds of a 30-second massive primary stat buff doing nothing. Absolutely nothing. So not sure why he didn't just channel as they were running past the pack, allowing Divine Field to round up the trash first, but nonetheless, here they go. We have the Bloodlust popped here, and they're cleaving everything down right now. Shine popping Death Pact immediately and getting a support intervene or intercept there from Divine Field, because if he goes down, there's no battle res for the group right now. Looks like they're absolutely decimating it, though. Well over 1.3 million damage from Ashine, well over Shella's earlier damage.
That was a huge pull. That was insane. They're 37% trash now. Pain for Femme are here for way longer, and they're on 39%. They just basically pulled everything that Pain for Femme pulled in like 3 pulls. in one. So that was just insane coming out of Abrakeydabra here. And the damage by Shine is 1.3 million I saw. I'm not sure if it even was higher than that.
He literally soloed the trash.
Yeah, he basically just killed it all by himself with that Bloodlust, and that's what they saved it for too. They were saving the Bloodlust all the way up until this point. We see one death coming in for Pain for Femme on Shelle, but they finished off the trash so they can just use a normal rest here. Don't have to commit this battle rest.
Yeah, I mean, that was insane. Abra certainly caught them a fair bit back up in the match, but they're still slightly behind, plus the 5 deaths of 25 seconds. But if they have anything else like that up their sleeve, any other big plays coming up in this dungeon, and at the pace that Pain for Femme is going, they're certainly going to pull ahead here. Pain for Femme pulling the Guardians on top of the remainder of the trash in Kragma's room, minus, of course, the Emissary of Tides. You don't want in there that in this pack, preventing any interrupts and crowd control. They're probably going to pull that on top of Kragma, as we've seen other teams do. 41% trash, 22 now for Abrakeydabra, as they're about to do the same pull that Pain for Femme is on, who sits at 50%. They actually pulled Kragma on top of the rest of this trash, so a bit of a dangerous pull. A lot of damage here for Femme right now, as that frontal indigestion goes out. He pops his shield wall in a reactionary measure after already getting chunked from the indigestion, so really dangerous for them, but it does help them stabilize with that 8-second DRCD as we get the first charge coming in from Kragma. They will have one more charge before the tantrum, and they need to finish this trash off before that happens.
Yeah, so they actually already had some problems here the first time around when they played Android on stage yesterday. They were wiping on this boss. I believe it was Femme that died, and they didn't have a battle rest ready, so they needed to reset the boss, and it cost them a lot of time when they did this exact same pull. This time around, a lot cleaner though. No problems at all. Everyone's alive. Everything seems very stable at this point, so just gonna have to finish off the boss. I don't think they're gonna pull anything else on top, except maybe this Emissary here in the corner that is rooted, and then they're gonna be fine. As Abra also did a pretty substantial pull before they pulled Kragma. They had the Guardians be pulled on top of the rest of the trash off this room, so now they only have Kragma left, so going a little bit safer with just pulling Kragma on its own without any trash on top. But because of those huge trash pulls that they did in the room in itself, they're still pretty close to Pain for Femme.
I mean, not yes and no. There's still about 35% difference between the two teams, and an extra 25 seconds on top of that.
If you consider the wipe.
Yeah. Well, you kind of need to do, because...
Well, no, but just raw dungeon speed. Their strategy is faster.
Absolutely.
Right?
I mean, they destroyed 2/3 of the room in one pull. I was soloed by an unholy DK, but... Abrakeydabra is sitting at 65 here. Pain for Femme 33 on Kragma right now. And Pain for Femme is, if they move at the pace they move, we were talking before this, Nagura, before this match, and their second underrot yesterday was certainly much better than their first. However, they did take it a bit too slow and steady on the part that they had a lot of trouble with Spore Caller Zancha not pulling the two Defilers on top of that. I'm not sure they can afford to do that against a team like Abrakeydabra that is more than likely going to do a very aggressive pull there, because if they have one more pull that saves them a huge amount of time like they did here in Kragma's room, then you are absolutely right. Even with the deaths, they will catch up at that point.
Yeah, they have to do those risky pulls again, like we've seen them do in the first time they played the Androt. Now, unfortunately, they didn't manage to pull it off the first time. They tried to do a risky pull on top of Sancha, as you said, with the Defilers, and then they just had a full team wipe, and it cost them the game against No Girls Allowed. So the second time around, they didn't risk it anymore. But as you said, they have to do it against Abra. So we'll see if they can manage to pull it off this time around for Pain for Femme. Now, Abra, they're still on 5 deaths, and they're still working on Kragma, so they definitely behind. But as you said, if Abra is doing this huge pull on top of Sancha and Pain for Femme is not, then that's the point in the game where Abra can catch up.
11%, 10% now on Kragma for Abrakeydabra, who still, of course, sits at 59% trash. There's no surrounding trash that they can cleave on top of Kragma, as Pain for Femme does. Their first, if I believe, will either be 2 or 3 pulls, depends how they do it here, of Defiler / Guardian combo. They already run over to one of these Hazard Noodles on the side and start cleaving it down, making sure to interrupt that Death Bolt with the remaining Guardians here. Now, both teams are running Alliance, if we haven't noticed, obviously, by now, whereas we've seen some teams actually run Horde, and the reason they run Horde is because of Arcane Torrent, which allows the Dispel on Bone Shield on these Guardians, allowing you a bunch more time here. A lot of damage and a lot of actually, it's an equally aggressive pull here on the side of Abra that Pain for Femme just did. Pain for Femme 74% right now, and here it is. This is where they struggled with the first underrot yesterday, and it looks like they're actually going to go for the aggressive pull again. I believe they're going to pull the double Defiler on top of Zancha.
Yeah, we see Abra also doing some pretty aggressive pulls here as Smok uses the wings to do some damage. You can see earlier in the pull he did 80k DPS as a healer on an AoE pack. That's quite a lot, so definitely showing that he can do a lot of damage on this Paladin and that it's paying off so far with the damage coming out of Smok. And you can see the percentage now, 72%, so only 2% behind compared to Pain for Femme. But now Abra also needs to do this pull that we've been talking about, and they're not actually. So they're playing it safe. They're pulling the Defilers first, making sure they finish them off, and the Death Speaker as well. And then they're probably going to pull the boss with the Emissaries. Now, Pain for Femme skipped the Defiler now, only pulled the Emissaries. And once the Emissaries are down, I believe they're going to pull the Defilers. And that's the risky strategy.
I don't know. I don't know if they should, because if they're watching right now, they know that Abrakeydabra didn't do that risky pull. And as a result, didn't do a huge pull to try and catch up. It looks like Pain for Femme is playing it up. No, they're not. Here they go, the double Defiler. Each one of those Defiler requires a double interrupt because of the Shadow Bolt AoE volley, and of course the Withering Curse that goes on players that decreases your damage done. So you certainly don't want that on your team right now. Their melee damage really isn't too hard to deal with. Like for the tank, it's not an immense amount of damage, but it does displace you because of those spirit totems that they put down. So then in a kind of position sensitive boss, you can see both of those totems there, they will one-shot you. In a position sensitive boss where you're trying to put upheavals down, point the boss in the correct direction for the shockwave, for those mushrooms on the side, the last thing you need is being displaced all over the place. Certainly it isn't mushroom for that. Pain for Femme here, 81% and 40% on the boss. Abrakeydabra not too far behind here at 78% trash, so just slightly behind, and also still slightly behind on the ball, slightly 35% on the boss here.
Yeah, so Pain for Femme, this time they actually pulled it off. Now they only have the Death Speaker left. Should not be a problem. I mean, Death Speaker needs to be interrupted quite a bit. You need to interrupt the Wicked Frenzy with a stun or something like that, because it's not interruptible with normal interrupts. And on top of that, you need to interrupt the Raised Death, which will spawn a Guardian if you don't interrupt it. But not a problem if there's only one map that needs to be interrupted. We have a lot of melees that can take care of that one, so not a problem for Pain for Femme. As they have their Bloodlust ready very soon, but I believe the last time around they did save it for the very last boss, which I kind of disagree with, because there's a trash pack to do after this where the Bloodlust, in my opinion, would be better suited and more efficient. But we'll see what Pain for Femme does, as Abrakeydabra finished off most of the trash that they're going to pull on top of Sunshot too, and now they only have Sunshot left.
Yeah, Pain for Femme moving to this dangerous pack, and I think I agree with you. I mean, there's one of these kind of menacing macaronis on the side right now that they blind, and then there's another one because of teaming right beside this Guardian pack, so it makes the pull particularly spicy. You can see here they're going to grab the Guardians on top of it along with the Death Speaker, and of course that Noodle and a Defiler actually joins the fray, but still no Bloodlust for the team right now, so I guess they just don't have that. But we're having Death Bolts go off on the head that they pulled on the side there. I'm not sure exactly what they're planning to do with it, if they're planning to cleave it down on top of the rest of this pack. Femme starting to kite around a bit just to make sure that the team has space. We can see the Emissary of Tides, of course, is rooted constantly by Mew on the side there in the middle, making sure that it doesn't prevent the interrupts on that Raised Dead. Which is weird, because a lot of teams actually end up not caring about the Raised Dead because they're cleaving 5 Guardians anyway. Why not just cleave 6 kind of thing? So interesting to see that they did care for that.
I guess you still have the Danger Noodle that needs to be interrupted, so maybe that's the reason why. So maybe it's just a teaming thing. It's interesting though that how teaming affects your strategies too, because as you mentioned, like without teaming, people would just not care about this Emissary at all. But now if you have the Danger Noodle, you kind of have to see it, or you just nuke down the Danger Noodle very fast before lots of casts go off. But it seems very dangerous, so they have to adapt their strategy a little bit because of this teaming affix. In case some of you don't know, teaming makes all of the trash give a little bit less percentage, but there's also more trash in the dungeon because of the teaming affix, so therefore some pulls need to be different.
Indeed, and usually bigger, not just different. But
yeah.
Abrakeydabra here dealing with the final 2 Corruptors that, of course, not only give them their 100%, but also opens up the pathway for the final boss. Kind of silly death here from Bearer right now. They do use the Battle Res. There's no reason not to. They have one left for the boss. Mew has also procced his staff, I believe, right there. Last thing you want procced before the final boss. Actually, maybe he did it on purpose because the proc wasn't from a health perspective. He actually dipped below 10% mana. I can't really imagine this pull is super taxing on Resto Druid mana, so maybe he did it on purpose there just to cleave those down. But nonetheless, we won't have that available for the final boss, which is where Pain for Femme is heading down right now. They still have a 3-death difference advantage over Abrakeydabra, who's still not even done with the trash right now. So that first wipe for Abra was pretty uncharacteristic. Well, uncharacteristic of a team that when they usually have problems is at the very late in the dungeon at the very last second. So that just set them back for the entire dungeon. And I mean, Pain for Femme here, as you mentioned, here's the Bloodlust, and they're just going to try to finish solve this boss as quick as possible and tie the series.
Yeah, and I mean, the strategy that Pain for Femme is playing here is just so fast. You can see look at the final time right now. If they manage to do all of those risky pulls and pull them off too, I mean, they had 2 deaths, but it didn't cost them a lot at all. So those risky pulls really paid off for Pain for Femme this time around. It didn't pay off the first time they played, but this time with the perfect execution and just playing much better and having a cleaner run, you can really see just how fast their strategy is. So Pain for Femme is so good at just figuring out those struts. I think the bigger problem for them is the execution, that they're just not able to pull off the strategies every single time. This time around it works. Now let's just hope that it works for them in the last game too, because if they finish off this boss here without any more problems, then they're going to tie up the series, and the last game is going to be the decider.
Let's hope. So you're against Abra winning.
It's going to be more exciting because Abra already qualified for BlizzCon anyway.
Wow, well, keep that in mind. I didn't realize you hate Dr. J just that much. Unbound Abomination here at 33%. They're about to spawn the last wave of Blood Visages, Pain for Femme, into a pretty masterful execution of Underrot. As Nagura mentioned, of course, just a couple of slip-ups here and there, but not a big deal. I mean, we had 1 death from Shella that was at the end of the trash, and then we just had a regular res coming up, and then just kind of a silly death from the Rogue right before coming downstairs here. Blood Visages has spawned. Titan Keeper Hezrel will be killing them for the team, and the series will be tied up at 1 apiece. And you got to think, if you're Abra right now, Jack, that is, you might start feeling a bit of pressure. I think they probably came into this going, hey, we got this no matter what. It's easy win for us. And then all of a sudden it's tied. They're about to be eliminated.
They just served up that game on a platter to Pain for Femme, though. From the very beginning onto that one, Abrakeydabra just had that instant wipe onto the mask and just gave a massive advantage to Pain for Femme. They just had to be able to play on the rails. They just had to do what their strategy was, and they were fine on that night.
Yeah, but to be fair, it's not like Abra quickly caught up and then it was neck and neck again. I mean, Pain for Femme played that dungeon quite well. They didn't even allow them to catch up. And even in a world where, let's say, Abra didn't have the wipe, I still think it would have been pretty close.
Well, I definitely think it would have been a lot closer. But onto that end, from the very beginning, they just had that confidence boost that they just needed to be doing exactly what they were in Tettles. We can start going over that one.
I think you're exactly right. It would have been close regardless, but they ended up having to break this mask pack up into 2 after they completely missed the harrowing cast at the very beginning, which ended up wiping the whole entire group. Basically, whenever you end up breaking those pulls up into 2, then it starts costing Abra a significant amount of time, putting Pain for Femme in the lead. Abra actually did try to claw it back pretty hard with how they ended up doing their Kragma room, but then Pain for Femme ends up doing some pretty cool pulls with how they pull Kragma with all the trash and everything else, like we've seen from Pain for Femme 2 times already, that Pain for Femme actually is just able to actually take the lead with this. Pain for Femme's strategy in Underrot is really, really strong if they are able to execute it, but it is also very dangerous. Abrakeydabra, with this pull, got 27% trash count in a teaming environment, which is actually just an insane amount. But then Pain for Femme, we've seen them have issues with Sporecaller Xantia with all the Defilers and the Death Speaker and everything else before. They're able to do it fine this time with both of the Tides and then both of the Defilers, and then they're able to take the game and tie up the series 1-1.
Very well played by Pain for Femme, and on that end is also going to start taking us into Motherload with Fortified, Raging, and Grievous. This has been a really fun series, not only because of how much is on the line for Pain for Femme, but also because of the dungeons that we're going against can be absolutely nasty. So we'll be taking a quick break before we go into it. Game 3, the decider match, is going to be coming up right after this. We're back as we're getting ourselves ready for Game 3 right now between Pain for Femme and Abrakeydabra. Loser is going to be going home. Now, of course, if you like to support WoW Esports, be sure to check out that Transmorpher Beacon or Hoarder Alliance fireworks, as proceeds do go to support the prize pool at the end of the year. Now, as we're entering Game 3 onto this one, Salute, Motherload, we've seen how nasty Fortified Raging can be. Some of those setups for all the adult thugs on top of that, any of the grease guns, if any mech jockeys are not getting inside their mechs. It's going to be a pretty nasty dungeon, but we're going to have to kind of test how deep Pain for Femme can go in terms of how well their strategies are working, how much they're practicing for these later dungeons.
I mean, hopefully they can go real deep here because Abra had a really good time.
You okay, Tunnels?
Okay.
Yeah, I'm great, dude.
What's wrong, Tunnels?
Abra had a really good time in their time trials. There's not time trials on this dungeon, but in general, they've performed this dungeon really well for every cup. It's not a time trial dungeon, Jack. I know, I had to double take too.
Yeah.
We're all silly here. But, I mean, we're going to see, you know...
Double.
Yeah, that was actually the next thing I wanted to say. The huge advantage that Abra has because of their low times on this dungeon is the double Unholy DK, something that actually Pain for Femme is now matched. How good is Ricky at Unholy DK? I'm not sure about his history.
He's practiced it.
I hope he practiced it. We're about to see here, Nigura.
I think they practiced it specifically for this dungeon just because Abra was being so fast with those double DK,
Oh, there
double
goes a
DKs.
DK.
Unlucky. Well, there it goes.
All right, we'll see you
They do
next
have a battle
series.
rest. No, they do have a battle rest, and they used the bloodlust after he died. After he already got rest back up, so at least he didn't lose the bloodlust there. But you can see in the damage meter, you can see how much more damage Ricky's doing compared to Shellis. So he definitely lost. He's doing nothing. He's like auto attacking. So that's definitely a huge loss for Pain for Femme here. As Abra, you can see the DKs is doing much more DPS. And now, I mean, we've seen Abra play this dungeon before, and they were 1856 compared to Method and A, which were the second fastest, and they had 20 minutes.
And Abra
so huge difference.
Abra having a lot of issues right now. Divine Field goes down, gets Battle Res, goes down again. Swag goes down between the two deaths of the tank. This is going to be a full team wipe here for Abra. History repeating itself from the Underdog dungeon. Jack smiling gleefully on the side for some reason. I don't know why. What's wrong with you two? I love Jay. Pain for Fen here, 18%. I'm just kidding, by the way, of course. Smock going down as well. This is our last day casting here. Abrakeydabra here looking... The problem is they're not even having a full team wipe. They're having a full extended resource trying to body run and finish off the pack wipe right now. 6 deaths on the board for the full wipe because they committed the battle res here. Peacekeepers running around in circles.
Oh no, they're still incumbent?
Well, they're trying to do their best to keep this pull alive because those Peacekeepers are at like 2% health. So it'd be a huge waste for them to die. Which is why Smock's running around in circles right now, trying to keep this pull alive. I'm not really sure he's going to be able to pull it off. He's basically oh no, they pulled extra trash on top of it. That's going to be it. That's going to be a full super duper wipe here of 10 deaths for the entire team. I mean, this is a nightmare, and I don't think they can get back, right? Because they used their mass stealth, so they have to clear some of the trash on the way.
Can Shadow Melt, but it's on cooldown for some people, so...
Pain for Fen looking good here, though. They only had that one death on Shella. That's what was looking more detrimental at the beginning, right?
Yeah.
Shella going down right as an Unholy DK, you know, during Bloodlust, a lot of damage lost, but I mean they're in a, once again, prime position here.
And that's actually a huge thing, to be honest, because when I saw Shella die, I thought maybe he didn't use his cooldowns yet, maybe he can still do the damage that he's supposed to do, but then when we saw that he got rest, he did absolutely no damage, right? And usually you assume that people are not going to die. So that they still managed to pull this off, this huge pull with the Bloodlust pull, without having Shella's damage, is still pretty impressive by Pain for Femme, that they recovered from having such a huge loss at the very start. So well done by them. Can't really say the same thing, unfortunately, for Abra. I mean, I understand that they constantly want to go back and re-engage the trash pack, just because those Peacekeepers have so much HP. It's a 45 setting, so if you have them really low and you start wiping off, sometimes on other packs you might just be like, you know what, let's just wipe it off, go again, right? But on such a pull where you commit your Bloodlust, you have those Peacekeepers with insane amounts of HP, you just kind of want to go back in and try to save the pull, and that's why it cost them to die 11 times, and at this point it's just a huge setback for them. So Pain for Femme, all eyes on them, really.
Yeah, and the worst part of the pull they were trying to save is it was actually salvageable. Those Peacekeepers are very slow. They constantly cast their shield, what have you. So Smock could have run around in circles. Their plan there was to wait for Jay to come back with stealth and then finish off those Peacekeepers while he ran in circles. But then I think Jay, well, somebody did, aggroed extra trash on the way back, and then that finished the job. So the absolute worst case scenario. And, you know, as far as the Shella pull is concerned at the beginning, I mean, yeah, Shella died. They rezzed him right away. He didn't get, obviously, his full damage off, but he still managed to do as much damage as the yellow DK on their team. So it's like they still pulled it off. He still did a fair amount of damage, and that's that. Pain for Femme here, sitting at a mighty 44% with, of course, that one death that I just mentioned on the board from the beginning, versus Abra's 23% trash, 11 deaths on the board. Now, you know, the potential saving grace here for Abrakeydabra is that there's still a lot of danger left in this dungeon. We still have Raging. That means 100% increased damage for any trash sub 30%, so mech jockeys can still grease gun anybody in the blink of an eye like we saw at the beginning. And then we also have that massive pull after the first boss that we see teams do with all the Geomancers essentially and the Sappers.
And it really puts a little bit of pressure on Pain for Fam too, to be honest, because if you're ahead like this, you know, Abrakeydabra is a team that in history is better than Pain for Fam, obviously, right? They have more experience, they're higher seeded. They're the favorites to win Abrakeydabra. So Pain for Fam, they go into this game maybe not expecting to win. They really want to win, but they're definitely not the favorites. So if all of a sudden they're in a tie, 1-1, this is the last game, and they see, oh, Abrakeydabra has a huge wipe. Now all we have to do is finish the dungeon without having any mistakes. Maybe it puts even more pressure on them to not make those kind of mistakes. So that's definitely something that is still up there. There's still things that can go wrong. Lots of things even. We've seen multiple teams wiping Motherload like that. And Abra, I talked about it earlier. Maybe I caster cursed them, but I did say that they have a really, really fast Motherload. So there's still some big pulls that Abra can do to make up some time. Of course, it's a lot of time they have to make up, but you know, if they do some fast pulls and they have Pain for Fam make some mistakes, there's a possibility.
I mean, that time has increased even more now. They're up to 12 deaths. They had another spot death during the trash, which is frankly not uncommon. I mean, we always talk about this dungeon, and I mean, we'll keep always talking and mentioning this fact that this is the richest trash dungeon in all of BFA dungeons. There's so much trash here, and it's very dangerous, not only for the tank, of course, because of the mass amount of trash you have to do, but the amount of residual damage on the group. We mentioned it a million times. The grease gun from the jockeys, ice spritzer from the refreshment vendors, just random charges from the inhale vapor thugs. So at any moment, that's why you just see one of the DPS just drop and die out in the blink of an eye, especially with raging here. So very dangerous dungeon. Looks like Pain for Fam is actually going past the first boss and doing one of the more aggressive pulls that we mentioned earlier that could be easily wipe tanks. So there's Earth Shapers. Got to watch out for those rock lances. Do a lot of damage. Again, repeating itself. Shelle goes down before the pull even gets going. Now, to be fair, he didn't pop any of his cooldowns, but they don't have a battle res available anyway. They haven't killed the first boss. They haven't secured a checkpoint. I'm not sure this was a good call. Why not just kill the first boss? Because if you have a disaster situation like this, at least those two DKs could have released and run back in and tried to finish the job, especially Shelle, who didn't have, he didn't even use his CDs yet. Now the entire pull is a complete disaster, and they're going to have to reset it. Fortunately for them, they are Night Elves, so they can reset it, but I mean, they're starting to throw it slowly back to Abra for, I think, not really good pathing here.
Yeah, this is what we've been talking about. Those are those mistakes that can happen in this dungeon. And yeah, I really don't exactly know why they're trying to do this, because as you said, I mean, most of the teams that are trying this pull, they have killed the first boss, because there's so many things that can go wrong, as we just saw for Pain for Fam. So not having this checkpoint is just like a huge mistake. So I'm not completely sure why exactly they chose this pathing. I'm sure there's a reason behind it, but Abra also having problems.
Yeah, Abra having problems. Swag is dead. They're only 1/3 of the way through the boss. Swag had a pretty problem kicking that football around. I mean, he should know better. These guys are European, Nogura. But, I mean, you know, the debuff did properly go in, jokes aside, but jokes not aside, Swag is dead. That an entire DPS missing on the boss, especially a boss that they pulled trash on top of so that these unholy DKs can flourish. So, I mean, just really sloppy play here for them. That's going to be a huge time dump. And pretty much any small catch-up advantage that they might have gained from Pain for Fem there, they actually just completely negated with this. I believe they actually ended up resetting the boss here and opting not to kill it off, because they deemed it would be more efficient to get out of combat with the Night Elf racials, the Shadow Meld, get the DK up, and just try it again.
Yeah, this is just difficult pull that they've shown us yesterday. They were pulling the trash pack that is in front of this boss on top of it. So definitely very dangerous, because you have a Peacekeeper there, you have an Assassin there, you have a caster there as well that constantly casts a Spritzer that needs to be interrupted. So lots of things that can go wrong, and you know, the DKs, unfortunately, just in both of the teams, DKs just going down over and over, and none of the teams have a battle res available to them. So mistakes like that, especially in boss combat, huge mistake. Thankfully, you can reset this boss, because some bosses are not even resettable at all, because Shadow Melt does not get you out of combat if you are in combat with a boss. So thankfully for them, they were able to reset the boss, did not get more deaths on their board, because they're already on 13. Pain for Fem chose to not try this pull again, on the other hand. They engaged a coin-operated crab handler instead, and now we'll see if they choose to do the same pull right after this.
Yeah, I mean, I think this was the smart play for them, kind of despite the failure that they had, because if they tried to do that pull again and then once again wipe, then they just did not have Shadow Melt this time to get them get out of jail free card, if you will. So 63% trash for Pain for Femme, a bit lower than we traditionally see before the first boss. Usually you see kind of mid 70s, but we have seen yesterday at least this new tendency towards a meta. I remember talking to Zyra about it, where they're actually pulling a lot of those drills on the side. 4 of those drills gave 13% trash count, something like that. So I think this teams are starting to incorporate this more into their gameplay right now, as Pain for Femme having turn 2 at their rather aggressive pull earlier, and I don't think they're actually, oh no, they are doing it as aggressively, okay. I was going to say they're not pulling the patrol, but Earth Shapers, very dangerous here, but we saw the power of double Unholy, and frankly, this won't really matter for the tank because they're about to melt.
Yeah, there's actually one part that they didn't pull here, I think. There's this one patrol, one
right,
Zappers.
Yeah, that's what I thought they pulled it. It was actually the 3rd pack, yeah. So
so they still have, I think, 2 or 3 packs together, but they did not, they left the patrol out. So definitely a little bit easier this time, and it seems a lot better for them. I mean, maybe they just didn't have the cooldowns or defensives available to, do the same pull. So definitely smarter this time around. I still kind of think, I mean, it was just kind of silly to even try the first pull, because if they're paying attention, which they seem to be paying attention to the stream, because the last time when they were so far ahead, they also adjusted their strategy in that underrot. So they seem to be paying attention. So this time around, Pain for Femme, Abrakeydabra is still having those issues. Divine Field going down, a Shine going down. I don't know. It's just not their meta load today.
Well, the thing is that they ran out of gas. This pull unraveled very slowly as you were talking, because you were looking at Pain for Femme.
Yeah.
Swag died early, so he died before the mobs got to raging. So then the raging mobs, which do some residual damage to the group, killed Ashine as well. Then you only had Jay there cleaving fully enraged mobs. Jay went down right after, and then obviously Divine Field's gonna fall. Like, there's a bunch of mobs sitting in raging. So he fell, and pretty much almost full team wipe yet again. Swag goes in, immediately gets clipped by a bomb. Femme goes down here, though, on the side of Pain for Femme. Ricky follows suit, and this is maybe gonna be a full team wipe. I mean, those mobs are low, but they're raging. I'm not sure how long Shelly can live. Not very long at all. That Rock Lance in the back right now is gonna kill someone. Fortunately, it was interrupted. The team does release as they have secured the checkpoint at the first boss and runs back into action to try and finish off this pull. This is, I mean, we had quesadillas yesterday, Nagura, but I wish we had them today for this fiesta as well.
Yeah, both teams, insane struggles for both sides, to be honest. I mean, but you can see the power of raging. This is what's causing most of the trouble for both of the teams. Whenever someone is going down, it's most of the time a raging death. Raging maybe is not the most visual affix to see, but once all of those once those huge pulls they're doing, they all go into raging at the very same time. If you don't have any sort of big AoE stance available or big utility available to help the tank or anyone else, then you're going to be in big trouble. And with those double DKs, they don't actually have the Windwalker anymore, right? So they don't have the Ring of Peace, they don't have the AoE stun from the Windwalker, so they're missing out on quite a bit of supportive utility that makes those pulls a little bit safer.
Speaking of safety, they did use Bloodlust here for Pain for Femme with a rather massive pull, and as I mentioned, they did pull the drills, or the extractors, more accurately named there on the side. That's a lot of percentage gain for them. In fact, it should put them in the high 90s once they kill those off, just shy of what they need before Azrock. Now, they could actually finish 100% here. No, they don't. Okay. 94% for them. So they're going to be moving up to Azrock soon, and they're probably going to finish their last percent somewhere near the gauntlet here, I would assume. We don't really see teams pull the R&D wing at all anymore, but Swag going down again for Abra.
They have Bloodlust available. Pain for Femme actually used their Bloodlust on this specific pull here. Abrakeydabra choosing to save it on the other hand. And Swag going down, they still have, they're now just going into raging, right? So this can still cause problems, even if there's not that many mobs left. But you see just how much damage Divine Field is taking. And as I said, not that much utility available from his team to help him out once those mobs are raging. They have a little bit of slow from the DKs, right? They have a single grip, but that's about it. And Divine Field just needs to make sure he survives, as he just keeps dropping low. He just gets those huge chunks of damage whenever he gets one of those huge auto attacks from those raging mobs. You can see, probably one of the best tanks to be able to get the huge physical damage hits. So he does manage to survive and finish off the pull, but 20 deaths.
Yeah, and the thing with those extractors that makes it even nastier, if I'm not mistaken, is that they are kind of elite mob style, like a lot of elite mobs that ignore a lot of forms of CC. I don't even know. It's been so long since I've pulled those on live. I don't even remember if you can bump them and grip them. I don't think you can. I think they just kind of run through everything until the humanoid controller spawns out of them. But Abrakeydabra, 92%, 20 deaths here, and they're about to pull Azrok with their Bloodlust. Bloodlust has been committed earlier for Pain for Femme, and it looks like they had a little oopsie daisy with their skip here as well as Shelly goes down on the side. He does get rezzed up. They're already sitting at 100% trash, and only 8 deaths on the board right now as they pull Azrok. So both teams on Azrok right now. Abrakeydabra a bit ahead on Azrok in terms of raw boss percentage, but they have 1 minute extra to overcome because of their deaths. Plus, they still are missing 8% trash, which I believe they pulled here with Taskmaster, Akari, and all of his residual mobs. It's a lot of damage too, which is why you see Divinefield running around in circles.
Yeah, unfortunately, DK is not the greatest class to kite those Earth Ragers here. You can see the DKs having double fixed here, and Ricky on Pain for Femme. He went up to 5 stacks from the bleed that the Ragers apply once they reach you and melee attack you, and he just had he was struggling to stay alive. And again, he got 2 fixates on him, so very unfortunate for Ricky on this DK. The Rogues, of course, they've had a much easier time to kite the Ragers because they've increased melee range, so it's easier for them to still be able to attack the boss and not get melee hit by the Ragers. And we've seen some teams actually wipe on this boss, but so far it looks like both Abra and Pain for Femme doing a good job. Abra is no, they didn't finish off the mobs yet, so there's still some mobs left that they have to deal with. And it looks like they're actually trying to not put them all into raging at the same time, which is definitely something that will help out Divinefield a lot.
I think that's really smart of them too, because the 2 mobs that they left crowd control on the side before they dealt with them are the Earth Shapers, and those have that Rock Lance that deals crazy amounts of damage. So if one of those by chance leaked when they were raging, I mean, Divinefield's just dead. It's pure magic damage, not exactly the best for a Prot Warrior outside of having Spell Reflect, but he only has one of those every 25 seconds. So Ashline taking a bit of bleed damage here for Abrakeydabra on Azrok's side, but managing to kite around and get away before any bleed stacks reapply. Pain for Femme here, 19% on the boss, 8 deaths still, and of course they've already done with their trash, so they're just looking to finish this up. And after that, well, really for both teams, because the final Earth Shapers are about to go down. After this, both teams are just boss and then boss again. So skip boss, but somehow Abrakeydabra is going to need to do it a minute faster.
Yeah, I mean, I really want to say that the pressure is on Pain for Femme to not mess up, because Abrakeydabra at this point, there's really not many things they can do differently, right? There's no like huge trash pulls they can do. They can't for some reason pull 2 bosses together. So all they can do is finish off the bosses. So if Pain for Femme is not going to make any mistakes, you know, they're just going to win, right? It's a 1 minute difference, even though Pain for Femme is going to reach the boss slightly later, but still, 1 minute difference, very, very difficult to make up, especially since they're running the exact same setup as well.
So both skips fully successful here on either side. No slip up, no accidental death, nothing. Abrakeydabra actually starts Rixa first as the Shelly gets just a bit of healing support rather from Muo, and they pull Rixa Flux Flame as well, just 3% behind Abrakeydabra when they started this, which is actually... Technically, Pain for Femme got here faster, moved faster. They were 10% behind on Azrok, so they closed that gap just a bit on Rixa right now. Both teams just doing what they got to do here. But, I mean, let's talk about this for a sec. Outside of anything freak accident, where are really any more choke points that could happen that the teams would wipe? The only thing I can think of was the skip we just did, which both teams did perfectly. The skip up to Mogul Razdunk, the final boss, which is, in my opinion, not as dangerous as the one that they just did. And that's really it. I mean, the rest is just screwing up a mechanic on one of these bosses that they've seen a trillion times now. Yeah,
and usually we would say, yeah, but what if the Rest Druid dies and it can't rest him? And then they would have to reset, would be a huge wipe. But they have 2 DKs, exactly. Right? So they have 3 battle rests, so no matter who dies, they're going to be able to get them back up. Now, they only have 1 battle rest available, so if the healer would die twice or something like that, it just would require some huge mistake by Pain for Femme. You can see they're really even, so it's actually very, very impressive by Abra to be this even in raw dungeon speed with Pain for Femme, even though they had so many huge mistakes. 20 deaths, and the first wipe cost him so much time too. So you can definitely tell that Abrakeydabra does, in theory, have a faster strategy, right? That's almost safe to say, because they're at the same percentage of the boss, basically, with all of those fails that they had, all of those mistakes. Well, Femme did have some mistakes too, but not as many as Abra. So definitely Abra having the fastest strategy, but that's not going to help you if you just fail on executing the strategy.
Pain for Femme actually having the slightly superior single target damage. They started at about 3-4% behind the boss, and now they're 1 to 2% ahead on the boss. You can see some of the slight differences here. Mio is actually outputting more sustained damage than Zmok right now on his Druid. The 2 DKs are doing slightly more than the 2 DKs on Abra. Rogues are, and the Rogue as well, is doing slightly higher. So everything is just slightly higher in damage except for the tanks on the side of Pain for Femme.
I think it's actually the army, because Shine and Swag have army ready now, and both Shella and Ricky used it on Rixa, so a little bit different usages of...
Ricky, I think, still has it, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, true, yeah, Ricky does it. Okay, so it's only Shella's army
See
that was
little
different.
icon that looks like you?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the army there, with that crazy evil ghoul-looking thing. Abrakeydabra rushing up the trash here, and both teams getting to Mogul Razdunk. Pain for Femme, having finished Rixa first, is the first to get to Mogul Razdunk, and they're looking to close out. If they win this match, which they probably will, I would say this is probably one of the biggest upsets that we've seen in the West Cup in a while. I don't think most people expected this.
No, definitely not. I mean, we already had so many upsets in this Western Cup too, because we have 40k disqualifying, which is something we didn't really expect it at all. At least not when we saw the Spring Cup. We did see 40k definitely struggle a little bit in the Summer Cup, so it wasn't the biggest surprise now. But this one is definitely a big surprise, because Abrakeydabra, they finished first in the time trials for the first cup, right? And then they got second last cup as well. They beat Method and A, which is something we never seen before, and that was their highest seed too, I believe. I don't think they ever got second in any of their cups. So really good job by Abrakeydabra last time around, and this time they're struggling. They're gonna finish. They're gonna lose to Pain for Femme in this best of 3, and they're gonna be out.
And Dr. J proxies cheat death on top of it, just to add insult to injury at the very end. Fortunately, no death, but once again, every time we say this, the Rogues are vulnerable, and then one of them ends up plopping over. So hopefully they manage to play the rest of this well. Transition here for Pain for Femme right now. I know exactly what you're saying, and Pain for Femme has probably some nerves right now. They're probably a bit shaky. They're like, oh my god, we're gonna... Because they know where they are in the dungeon. They know how ahead they are. One of those missiles hitting the entire group on Abrakeydabra right now. Bit of just not the team we know from Abra today, really. Just not their day, but they enter transition here as well. And frankly, the only way they're winning this is a full team wipe from Pain for Femme right now.
Yeah, that's the only way at this point. There's no way you can
out. Did they reset their boss on Pain for Femme? I think they reset the boss.
Ooh, okay, they did. Oh, well, there's the mistake that we're talking about.
Yeah, but that actually might have thrown them the match.
That definitely did throw them the match. The 1 minute difference, there's no way they're going to make up for this now. I mean, they reset them at 50%, so...
I missed exactly what happened. I just looked back over and the boss was despawned. They must have moved too far away for baiting the boss, or one of the ads jumped out of the arena or something. Oh no, this is actually a disaster. Now their only potential slight saving grace is the Bloodlust, but they have to win. They only have a minute. Oh my god,
we caster cursed them.
No.
What did we do, Sloot?
We did what we had to.
All right, well, okay, so there's a chance, right? 1 minute difference and Bloodlust. But... I mean, they're doing a lot of damage. Look at them. I mean, they burned the boss pretty fast at 70%. 50% we have the intermission phase. But the intermission phase just takes quite a while, and you can't make up time
Exactly, because the intermission phase, you have to wait for the boss to select its target, to drill down on the oil drums and all that kind of stuff. I mean, I think this is going to be... I mean, Game of Thrones Season 9 starting right now for the Cup here, but 55% for Pain for Femme. They're about to hit their transition phase. Abrakeydabra still not done with the fight, though, so every second that Abrakeydabra is not done with the fight and Pain for Femme has now started this kind of very scripted transition phase, allows them to have a better chance at winning it.
Yeah, so Abrakeydabra about to finish off the boss, and then you just have to take a look at the clock, right? They're going to have 60 seconds on Pain for Femme's side to finish up. They have the Bloodlust available, but they're still in this intermission phase. It just takes so long. And Abra, they're done. They're done with the dungeon. 1 minute from now on for Pain for Femme, they're not going to be able to make it.
I don't think they are. They don't have any cooldowns available either for that Bloodlust, so as much of a saving grace as that would be, it's just not enough for them right now. They're still in transition phase right now, and they have, let's see, 40 seconds left. There is, I don't think there's any way they're going to do this. Tranquility going up here from Mio, just making sure everyone's safe. Everybody desperately trying to do whatever damage they can. I think, is this their last oil drum?
Yeah.
Coming down here right now, but there's no way, man. They have 25 seconds left to burn this boss. There goes the Bloodlust, and they're going to have to do over 2% per second on this boss, plus the little control at the end. I mean, they're going big here. They're going all in right now. 15 seconds left on the clock, 10 seconds left on the clock, but it's just not going to be enough. And somehow, Abrakeydabra pulls out a final magic trick and ends up winning with a 2-1 upset over a reverse upset, I suppose, over Paint for Femme, who paints their final stroke of this tournament, Jack.
Oh my goodness. Despite their best efforts, Abrakeydabra somehow is able to pull out a win and stay alive in this tournament. Twice, 2 different dungeons here, Titles. They just had the most catastrophic failures and somehow are able to move on that one end. Any of the ads in the intermission phase would happen for Paint for Femme side. Anytime they're going to have these little disengages that'll start moving them away from any of the players whenever they get attacked. If you start moving them a little bit too close to the edges of the room, they can jump outside of the room, reset the boss. That's exactly what happened for them, and Abra pulls through. It's ridiculous.
That is actually just so bad for Paint for Femme. Paint for Femme actually really needed this win. No Girls Allowed also probably pretty upset over the fact that the boss ended up despawning there, so that was really a shame for Paint for Femme.
And Motherload in particular is just one of those dungeons, like, there are so many ways that you can wipe. There's so many ways you can make these kind of mistakes, and again, you know, Paint for Femme just had it right in their hands and got rid of it. So Abrakeydabra is going to be moving on and awaiting the winner between our next match.